crazy franchise, in my opinion. It's a crazy project for a lot of reasons. One is low budget, of course. This is not Sam Mendes 1917.
No.
Because of the genre that you're approaching with this kind of project, is probably the most difficult thing you can do on a low budget. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know the average audience for this, which is not you. I don't know how much they can appreciate how difficult it is to do it in this way. So my question is very simply, what made you accept this challenge?
Sure, yeah, great question. And I'll talk about it for 7 hours. Yeah, the truth is, like, so I've made a few movies with Scott Adkins, who was the lead. Obviously, I'm sure many of you are aware of him. I shot a thing called Green Street 3 many years ago, like 10, 12 years ago or something, and then we went on to this film called Eliminators. And I think we were just falling into this trap of like, well, like, I'm making these movies, but they were kind of only really being seen as a sort of straight to DVD audience, and I really was trying to push things further. And so I thought, well, Scott's an incredible actor, incredible on-screen fighter. There's really no reason he shouldn't be more of a household name. And this is 10 years ago. And I was like, well, how do I take his skill set, which is being one of the best on-screen fighters we have, and how do I take my skill set, which is like being a very technical director, marry those two things? And I think I was in the pub with the producers, and I sort of said, why don't we just make this like 90-minute movie where Scott's like, by the end of it, he's like nearly dead, and he's just breathing, like he's like barely able to walk, and it'd just be amazing. There'd be so much action. And they were like, no one is ever going to give you the money to make that movie. It sounds amazing, write it, but we're never making it. And I was like, okay, fine. And then, you know, they trickled along for a while. They were like, did you ever write that? And I was like, yeah, I did write it. And then it got sold to a company. I couldn't make it work with them because, as you say, there's just not enough money to do it. Truthfully, you need the 1917 money. And it was like 8 years went by when this project was sort of locked in with this company, and they kind of like shelved it a bit, and I tried to get it back, and they were like, well, you know, we're trying to make it again, and they were just sort of making me jump through these hoops. And COVID happened, and people were looking for like contained movies, but like also like action-heavy movies, and someone said to me, have you still got that project? We'd be really interested in it. And I said, yeah, I have, and I managed to get it out of the company now, because it'd been kind of dormant for about 7 years, 8 years at this point. And it just found a home at Signature and Sky, and they said, we'll give you some money, not a load of money, but the COVID of it all, this is number one, I should add. So number one kind of hasn't got the sheen of the airport, for example. I don't know if any of you have seen number one. It's probably a little bit more gritty, a little bit more raw. The fundamentals are the same, the skeleton, the framework is the same, but it's a lot more of a kind of raw movie, and we played into the rawness of it, trying to make this kind of like docu-realism, martial arts action thing, and it did phenomenally well on Sky. For some reason, I don't know whether like the trailer was good or it was just the time it came out, but it just did these like sort of through the roof numbers. Yeah, I can't remember all the specifics, but it did like amazing numbers for Sky. And they were like, well, when's the sequel? And we were like, oh my god, a sequel? Like, well, yeah, well, because I pitched, when I was making number one, I pitched a trilogy. I said, we should do one more shot, one last shot. And they were like, yeah, whatever. And then they turned to me and they said, well, we did through the roof numbers, like, do you have the idea for the second one? I was like, well, I do, but it was just a chat. And they were like, well, write it. And we wrote it, and we thought, well, what can we do? Like, we didn't have any money on the first one, so what can we do on the second one? We were like, we want everyone to know we've got money. So we're like, where do we go? We're like, we're going to the airport. And, you know, it was just this bold decision. And also, we tried to listen to the fans, and like, a lot of people wanted more plot than the first one. The first one's a bit more kicky punchy.
But you did segue it quite well. If anyone doesn't know, this film picks up pretty much where the last one ends.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of 24, I suppose, and the initial kind of pitch on the sequels was like they'll always be 12 hours after the first movie, so we just pick up. And also with this one, we sort of, there's a lot of connective things, like subtle things between the first movie and the second. There's characters mentioned in the first movie that turn up in this one. It's like this kind of little world we've created, and same with the foresight of maybe a number 3 one day. We've kind of like left ourselves.
I noticed Michael J. White does not die.
Yes, Michael doesn't die, we'll see. And I don't know if I've rounded out your question, but we set this up. We set a bar really high with the first one, and then with this one, we were like, well, how do we make it more challenging, better? And honestly, we kind of made it more difficult and unnecessarily difficult, and kind of too difficult to shoot. In that we ended up at the airport. The whole thing's shot at Stansted over 20 days, but you can only shoot between midnight and 4 a.m. because of all the tourists. So it's actually shot 20 times 4, which is what, 80 hours to shoot that movie, which makes it even more logistically difficult. And so we've always said if we are lucky enough to go to number 3, I'm literally just shooting in a warehouse, like where I can just get max time to do all of the effects and fights and etc. etc.
Maybe we can ask Dan like a bit about some of the choreography for that then. James has just mentioned the difficulty. What were some of the difficulties you had?
Well, we had a little bit more time on this one. So I had a few guys from the stunt team, and Tim Mann and myself had a space at the hotel, which was next to the airport, which is kind of our production base, and we were in there like for 2 or 3 weeks, I think. And Tim and the guys were just going through every day, just creating stuff. The issues that we had is, although we had done recce's around the airport, we couldn't go to the airport to rehearse anything. We couldn't block anything in the space. So we were like building boxes and doing the whole stunt viz thing, but we couldn't actually try anything in the space. So there were some of the scenes we had never done it in the space. So we'd get there on the day, and then the actors were like, oh, this is here, and this is smaller than I thought, or this is, there's different logistics. So, and some things obviously you can't plan for exactly perfect, so we were having to make small tweaks.
Prompting them sometimes.
Prompting who?
Yeah, prompting them. If you didn't get to practice it there, and are you able to prompt a bit?
We're always trying to figure out quick ways of shaving things and fixing things with as little or as great an efficiency as possible. Yeah.
There's a really good example of what Dan's talking about. For you guys, you'd probably watch it and be like, oh, that was planned. But like the fight with Scott and Teddy Linnard, who plays Campbell, in the downstairs bit where before he steals his mask, we did that. That was a one-take fight because when they were doing it, you may or may not notice, but Scott pushed Teddy into the wall and the plasterboard went in. That was not planned. That was we actually went into the wall of the airport, and I remember I sat there on the monitor and I was like, because it's the very beginning part of the fight, he just grabs him, puts him up against the wall, and he just goes into the thing, and I'm like, like never getting another one of these. And then me and my producer's you, and he looks at me and goes like this, and I look at him like this, and then we carry on watching the fight. And no, it's Ben. Okay. And then like at the very end of the fight, the producer turned to me and went, "We're not getting another fucking one of them, are you?" And I went, "Well, we could maybe CGI." Went, "No," because he's just thinking of the insurance, like, and everything of like damaging the airport, because it's a working airport, like that had to be fixed. So he just sort of stood up and threw his headphones down, and I was like, "Oh, that's a shame." But I after the fact, I spoke to Scott and Teddy, and I said to them, what happened, like, and they went, well, as soon as he went into the wall, we just thought, we're not getting another one of these, so let's just fucking go for it. And that's why they really are kind of like lumping each other in that fight, because they didn't want to like have to do it again. So
they were thinking of you.
Yeah, they were thinking about us, and that's what this is an example of, like, not being able to rehearse, because also this is a stupid thing, but to shoot in the airport, it's like going on holiday. It takes an hour and a half to get all the crew through, because we all have to go through the security channels. And for some reason, I love Scott, he's one of my best mates, but he'd forgot to bring his passport during the rehearsals. So the week of rehearsals that we had in the airport, we actually couldn't take Scott airside, and he was moving house, and his passport was in a box somewhere that he had no idea where it was, and we couldn't spare him to go home to Birmingham to get this box. So we basically were sort of forced into a situation where we had to rehearse at the hotel, because with Scott at least, just because the guy didn't bring his passport to the airport. So just these silly little things that you like couldn't. And also people are catching COVID here and there, so it's like, and that was another kind of silly thing that we, no one had the foresight. It was like, we're shooting in an airport that has like a traffic of about 20,000 people a day. There's probably COVID flying around the airport, and you know, so anyway, but yeah, lots of challenges being there.
Nanni, have you got one more question, and then we'll ask.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, well, to me, the most fun is by watching it and by being passionate about how you make movies. Is to me, is thinking about how you plan the whole thing, especially the geography of things. Because the difficult thing in doing one shot is you don't just follow one person, you follow different groups. So you have to bring them together, so you have to plan, and you have to have the full map of the place, of the location. So was that the fun part, or was the more difficult, or how did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, that is really fun. It's fun to be creative. A lot of filmmakers in the room, I'm sure. And, you know, it's part of the pre-production and script stage. When we're writing the script, we've already kind of like scouted the location, and we've looked at it and gone, that looks cool, that looks cool, that looks cool. How can we build a journey? Because there are some geographical jumps in the movie. Like, I'm sure you wouldn't necessarily know where they are, but like, we are jumping space and time in by building a fake wall here and there and stuff like that to kind of confuse you. So, but then a lot of the airport is in its entirety. So yeah, it kind of gets designed from recce's, and then we have a framework for the script, what we want to do. Then we go and recce the location, try and jimmy it all together, and then we rewrite the script around knowing kind of what we know. So yeah, it is it's the creative bit, and in the way that Dan gets to be creative with the way he wants to do fights and stunts, is I get to be creative with the geography, you know, in the script. So.
Do you want to add anything to that, Dan?
Yeah, it was great fun, and just being able to look at these spaces that are so amazing, like the baggage area with all the things going around, and stairways and ladders, and you know, you're coming up with all these amazing ideas, and you're like, oh yeah, we don't have time to do that, but what can we do? And yeah, it was great, and the underground, like the subway tunnel and the cave under the ground, that was really cool to just go, well, we've got this space, what can we do here, because the script wasn't written for the space, so let's figure out where he can hide, how people can pop up, where we can take falls and kills and stuff. And
yeah, the difficult thing, I guess, is putting everything together without leaving any dull moment, without making it obvious that you're moving the camera from one place to another, and have everything literally put together. Yeah. And that's the part that works the most for me. That
I think the trick is trying to keep the pace up, because it can, and hopefully you didn't get bored, but watching one-shot stuff can get boring if you don't if you're not really rapid with it. And so if we're not being rapid with the action or the walking or the running or trying to keep the dialogue fast, and it's sort of like the sucky bit where, because you can't go back and edit the movie, you kind of have to have the foresight in the pre-production stage or the production stage, really keep an eye on, like, is this feeling fast enough? Is this, because the worst thing would, you know, for you to be like feeling like you're just watching us walk around an airport in an undynamic way, you know, whereas they probably cover about 2 miles, 3 miles of ground there, you know, but you don't feel it because there's always something happening, and that's what we try. That's sort of, we also do that with sound to try and like throw you. So if like it feels like it's getting boring, all of a sudden we'll have something off screen that and try to create a sort of soundscape.
That's cool. Okay, I think we're going to put some questions to the audience now if anyone's got any. Do you want to ask a question, please?
Sure. How much of an influence do review sites like IMDb or Metacritic have on the way you go about your direction or choreography, if any?
Yeah. Do you have a
for me, I don't think much. I know there was a lot of, in the first one, there was a lot of references to computer games and Metal Gear Solid and stuff like that, and they were actually to some degree some references in pre-production, so it was good to know when things worked and when things resonated, so we then took that concept of, okay, that works, let's use that. I wouldn't say from a stunt perspective we did or didn't do anything that was influenced other than that.
I think the only thing I'll add to that is so it's a tricky one because you're not really making the movie for you and your mum, if you know what I mean. Like, you really, like, if you want to progress into like the more mainstream cinema, you have to think that you're making for a wider audience. So of course feedback is important, like IMDb or like, you know, Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, but at the end of the day you're still trying to be your voice and create something that you want, but you do have to kind of like listen to like things that worked on the first one, things that didn't work on the first one. So we definitely did, like perhaps before it got to Dan, in terms of like a script level, we knew that in the first one everyone liked this kind of Metal Gear Solid knife sequence, and we thought, well, we should definitely have something a bit like that in this movie, which was supposed to be the kind of airport, the luggage sort of amongst the boxes, because it was a bit maze-like. And people were like, we need more plot, so we tried to put more plot in. We probably put too much plot in, to tell you the truth. But so we definitely did respond to it, but equally, I think you have to. I think you do have to. But also, don't get, like, if you're talking about it from a filmmaker's point of view, don't get disheartened by it, because it can break you. Some of the reviews I get are like, it's like, why am I still making films? It's like being like shot in the head every time you read a really bad one. But you keep going because you love it and you want to make something cool and you want to get better and better at it. So, yeah.
And you're going to put stuff in there that you actually want to see yourself as well, aren't you?
Totally, we put stuff in there that we think is cool, and we also try to put like the scene in the abandoned metro station at the end. We thought, well, we didn't, in the first one, we never did a scene from like the bad guys. We do follow the bad guys, but we never did like a scene, and we did this bomb scene in the first one where this suicide vest, and you follow the kind of young terrorist who doesn't really want to be doing it, and it's a really powerful scene. But we thought on this one, why don't we do like a kind of aliens, like they're in the walls, like sequence, and that was supposed to be that. So we actually follow the bad guys as opposed to following Scott in that one, and they're trying to just put like a unique spin on what we're doing, so trying to find new stuff.
It works quite well because you're bringing the audience to follow a different perspective, and then the audience having to almost stay awake a bit to see whose perspective they're following.
Yeah, I do think we're trusting you guys quite a lot, really, with a lot of what we put in the background and a lot of the sounds and voices we do. We're not necessarily spoon feeding you, so it can be hard to keep up sometimes. Yeah, I'm glad you spotted him, and I heard someone laugh when they saw Scott like standing in the background. Someone was like, and I was like,
yours a whole role.
and I'm like, yes, they saw him, which is great.
Because he was in the background, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Have we got any more questions for anyone? Okay, the gentleman there. Sorry, please, can you project your voice?
Yeah, sure thing. First, congratulations on the film, and it's obviously very inspiring to see what you guys are doing, particularly for British action cinema. For extended periods, you've got the cast kind of giving these really fantastic, like, distressed performances. I was wondering if you could just speak to like what the atmosphere was like on set, and if you had any advice on like how to elicit those performances out of your cast.
Sure. Wow. Yeah. Good question. Well, I wouldn't say I like to keep it tense, because I think I'm quite a chill person. So I like to keep it like a very productive set, and like a very appreciative, like, let's all work together, let's all get the goal. But I think where the stress comes from, aside from being written like be stressed and saying, keep it, keep it that way, is the actual time factor of the one shot. Like, because it's not really a secret to you guys, it's not all done in one shot. There's stitch cuts in the movie, but we shot it in 20 days, so we are still trying to get these, like, I think the longest take in the movie might be 11 minutes. So we are still trying to get like long take shots, and that does put stress on the performers, because especially if there's like 20 people in the, you're talking about, you've got like 5 or 6 up front leads, but then you've got like these background performers of another 5 or 6, and then you've got all the stunt team, like another 20. No one wants to be the guy or girl who fucks up and then goes to and has to turn, especially at the end of like 9 minutes when we're just about to cut and some idiot like tripped over in the background, and you're like, oh, we have to go again because Mike fell over, and everyone's going to look at Mike and be like, Mike. So, it's kind of like that just creates this atmosphere. So it's not like we're taskmasters, it's just this what happens, with the, but then there's also this like amazing camaraderie when you get to the end of it and you're like, oh guys, we did it, like, yes, high five. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, and I think because of the long takes, it has very much a theatrical performance for the actors in terms of how they would deliver a scene. Normally in film you're doing short takes, you're cutting all the time, you're getting lots of coverage, whereas the actor can start their scene at the beginning of the scene and they can work their through line, their character arc all the way through the scene for 9, 10, 11 minutes. So that's where you get that constant power, that intensity of the performance, because they're not having to reset every 5 minutes and kind of doing the same thing over and over again 20 times a day.
Will it
The other,
oh, sorry.
sorry. Well, I was just going to, one last thing, sort of on that vein, just before we change, is, to be honest, you wouldn't be able to shoot this film conventionally in the hours that we had. Like, you know how hard it is to shoot, like a dialogue scene around a table can be a director's graveyard. You might do eight shots on just 3 minutes of dialogue, and it's like, when you're paying that much money and you've only got that limited time in an airport, to actually shoot something conventional, like a conventional fight, like a fight you might see in Fast and Furious or something, you might need 40 shots, and we've only got one. So like, it's sort of like it's the brilliance of the one shot, but also the curse of it is that you can't make it as dynamic as some films, but then you are pushed to be creative in a different way and like make it more achievable. So.
I was just going to say that Will and I from the team were talking yesterday about some directors give their actors an opportunity to ad-lib and kind of, with this one-shot thing, is there opportunity to do that, or would that even work in a way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what happens is they ad-lib in the rehearsals and they get there with it, because we don't tend to do one take a night. We might get up to... The beautiful thing about the first one, really we try to get one shot a day. So the brilliant thing about the first one is, because we could shoot for 11 hours, we would probably get to 30 odd takes, and it would just get better and better and better and better. With this one, because we're only shooting for 4 hours, we're getting a third of that time, we'd really get to like 11 takes. So and you can guarantee the take we use would be the one that we finish with, or maybe the one before, that'd be like take 10 or 11. And, but I think they're kind of ironing out that playfulness and like finding the character with every go.
Okay.
Until they get to that take. So there'll always be like a certain different type of energy, but the gist is the same. And really we are blessed that with the actors we had, we were kind of able to riff within that, and no one's getting too thrown. Yeah. Because I have done movies before where some of the actors have come from a really like thespian, we have to stick to the words, and then other actors that have come from like, this is England, let's make it up. And then when you put them both in a sequence, they can't, like one of them's like going off on his own tangent, and the thespian actor's like, wait, what did you just say? Like, where's my cue? And you know, it does create riffs. Whereas we try to get them to stick to the script, to tell you the truth, but they are allowed to be flexed within that. Yeah.
Did that kind of answer your question a bit, or anything? Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great answer.
Sorry, I rambled.
No, it's fine. Natasha, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, so I've got a short in tomorrow, and it's a one-take short film.
Amazing.
But it's like 4.5 minutes, and you know, there's a difference. So you're talking about like it being like theatre play for actors, but I found it's the same for the crew as well. But they're not used to theatre, and then suddenly you have to make this whole choreography for the crew, which you're also making choreography for the fight and also, right? So how did you guys find out? Because for the lights especially, all that kind of stuff, I noticed you were shooting all around in some scenes as well. You can't have light stands or
yeah.
How did you work with the crew?
So that's great twin to what that gentleman was saying about the stress, because the stress isn't just on the cast, it is on the crew as well. Like, it is a complete dance, you know, between the operators, the stunt guys, everyone, sort of the boom operator. And so we're very clever with the way we were hiding the lights in the airport. And a lot of the beauty of the airports are technically lit anyway, so we would just change out the bulbs to be kind of like film friendly. But the beautiful thing is that with a lot of the modern lights as well, those via Bluetooth and an iPad, you can sort of dial them up and dial them down. So like, if there was ever like the camera needed to go in front of a light, the gaffer's like round the corner, kind of like dimming that one as the camera guy went past, and then the camera goes past, and then the light would come back up, and maybe because it'd be obvious, then we'd have to, like, during rehearsals go, okay, well, that's going to be really obvious, so we have to turn off there and look at something so we don't see that light go up and down, but then we have to come back and get that light back on. So it's just stuff you're finding out as you get, and as Dan said, we actually couldn't rehearse in the airport, so we would kind of making it up as we went along. As we arrived, we kind of had a plan, but we didn't know how the plan for sure would work, and then, you know, it's like guessing and stuff. But congratulations on your shot. I'd love to see it. Is it action?
It is.
Yeah,
all
cool.
of them martial arts action.
Great. How did you find doing the fighting in one take?
The fight went fine.
Yeah, it's all the acting.
No, it was like it was every time the fight and the acting with the same people. That went fine, but then the camera has to get the right angles.
Yes.
And then you also have the thing of both characters are equally big characters, but the camera angles, you need to fight to sell. But it's also hard with the light and everything, and then you don't want the character to be smaller than it actually is.
Yeah, completely. I mean, one of the skills of Dan and Tim and his team is like, you know, you have to sell punches, right? You have to make them look like they connect. And like when you can actually cut and reframe and cheat the fist to go there and da-da-da-da-da, like it's easier. Like it's still a challenge. People are still getting close, but you know, we couldn't do that, as you found out. You know, so there are certain angles you can't do because you can't go like a top shot directly above because you're going to see that they're just not hitting each other unless they hit each other.
Yeah.
So we do. That's kind of what Dan's doing in the hotel. Before we got there is like working out kind of how to put the camera so that we can make you feel fast. And the other beautiful thing that we're blessed with is Scott Adkins can, you know, take the wing off a fly. So he just is very phenomenal at his spatial awareness, I guess. Mm-hmm. And if you find a bunch of actors, and we were lucky that all of the fighters were kind of willing to kind of go there and near miss and stuff, that kind of what we needed. So yeah.
And they're all so good that, you know, Scott or Michael or Aaron have always got an awareness of where the camera is. So even if the camera's slightly different to where it might have been before, they know, oh, the camera's there now, I need to angle my punch slightly differently. Mm-hmm. And they're obviously at the top of their game, so they can just do it.
Amazing. We may have to wrap this up now because we're short of time.
I ask one quick one. So you managed to do a sequel to One Shot. What were the main lessons you learned from the first time you did this type of movie?
We did learn lessons. Do you know what? Making one-shot movies is like relearning how to make a film because everything is different, from writing the script to the way they shoot it, even to the way you do post-production. Stuff like sound design and bringing the score in and out without it just being like a fade up, fade down. Because normally you have cuts and you can hide things in cuts. You know, you can hide music cues in cuts, or you can hide sound effects in cuts, or you can hide color grading. Like all of a sudden, there's a shape on there, and there's a shape there to make the scene look better. But like, because it's all in one, how do you get those shapes there? And you have to find ways to like bring them in another shadow, and then have it appear. And so there's like, it's just like a whole complex minefield. So we learnt stuff like that, basically, all this technical things that well, not you, maybe not, but like my mum wouldn't even consider and have no thought about, because she wouldn't consider that in a normal movie. But yeah, that was kind of. But then equally, you kind of go and unlearn it because you want to make something original and fresh. So God knows what we'll do if we get the chance to make the third one. You know, it will be like starting again, I'm sure. And we've all gone on and shot another couple of movies in between that we shot conventionally. So it'll be a whole relearning.
Well, hopefully we can. I am going to have to be a bit strict there.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm so sorry. But thank you so much. Can we give them a round of applause?